The littlest landlady. Okay, we can probably skip at least some of this. Alright, here we go. Well, we can skip this part too. This is us, I'll read this very pointed one line. Watson invited us to his and Holmes's flat, and so we decided to walk the way together. And now we're going to talk about detective stuff. Now remember, this is all about our detective rating, so the results wouldn't be accurate. What was that about the two of them? Oh, it's about their shirts. That's so funny. Watson even less capable of cooking and cleaning, but he's a Disney princess. He can do it. Oh no. Okay, well I skipped a little bit of stuff, but we're fine. How many times had I been here now? Ah, right. This made it the 4th, didn't it? I should prefer a carriage for the 5th.
There you are! I was hoping you'd arrive about now. Thanks for dropping by.
We were happy to. I wanted to come and visit again soon, so the timing was just right. Were you off on an errand just now?
I was, but only to the post office to send off a letter. And if you'd ever like to visit, you don't need to wait for an excuse, you know. Coming to see us is reason enough, isn't it?
I suppose you're right. Thank you.
Speaking of, I hope it was alright to call you over like this today.
Very much so. Besides, you must be rather taken with this lady to seek outside help for whatever dilemma she's in.
I think there's been a misunderstanding. The lady in question is our landlady, and I only thought fellow women would better understand her feelings.
So that's who it is. I did hear she's quite young, but I didn't know she was close to our age.
You did? She is young, that much is true, but... never mind. Step in.
Watson opened the door to allow us inside. Thank you for holding the door. I took one step in and was immediately cut off by someone new. Where have you been, you horrendous nitwit? Hello? I could scarcely let out a yelp of surprise before a small girl had crashed into me. She had a lovely mint shade to her hair, mostly tucked beneath a yellow bonnet that was fastened with ribbons near both of her ears. How could you leave a girl alone for so long? I was given the worst kind of fright, I'll have you know. The way she clung to me was much like a child cling to their mother. There was no chance to escape or even to step aside. That and her shoulders had the tiniest, most adorable quiver. What gentleman puts a lady through this? A failure of one, that's what! I'd been terrified this entire time, just terrified. If I die during this case, I swear to become a ghost whose only desire is to haunt you forever! I suppose the best course of action here is... This is probably more Watson-y. Are you alright? Wait, who might you be? The girl seemed bewildered from having realized she scolded the wrong person. Or could that perhaps have been the way she always looked? Her eyes, a striking blue, were as large as I'd ever seen, and were made more doe-eyed still by tears that sparkled.
She's a schoolmate of mine and Holmes's. I called her here.
It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Emily Whiteley. Emily Whiteley? My! Aren't you not one of Her Majesty's detectives? You know of her? That I do. Only a true lady reads the daily paper, if that's not too brazen to say. Oh, look at me. I didn't intend to greet a guest so roughly. The more her understanding of the situation raveled, the more her emotions unraveled in turn. You'll forgive me, won't you? It's not often one is forced to see me in such a frantic state.
You could do with learning some patience.
I am patient! I am! Unable to cope with the embarrassment, she buried her face in her hands.
All right, Hudson, all right. put the kettle on, won't you?
Right away! I'll put on the finest tea you've ever had. Do come along in. Thank you. Oh, are you... I'm Sarah Marple, and you're... Marple intently scrutinized Hudson, who seemed to fidget from nerves the longer upon she was stared. You're like a little puppy. You're a rather charming landlady, aren't you? A puppy? I can't say I've been called that before. Regardless, come. I'd love your help with this. It would be my pleasure. We made ourselves comfortable as Hudson prepared some tea. Here you are. Ooh, thank you. And for you, Miss Marple. Thank you. There.
Put it down with more care. Gently now.
We both know you'll spill the load of it once you start drinking. All right then, I ought to introduce myself. I'm the landlady here, Abigail Hudson. Yes, we've heard a lot about you. You cook all the meals here, yes? Mm-hmm. I make every single one for every single tenant. I'm not one to boast, but everyone loves them.
That's what you call boasting.
And not only do I do the cooking out of the goodness of my heart, I do all the washing and cleaning for some hopeless tenants who can't manage it themselves. And would you look at that? We have one shining example right here. He's the one wearing a hat. She pointed at Watson so directly that a shockwave might have flown from it. Neither he nor Holmes do any housework at all! It's unbelievable!
Must you tell her that?
I only speak the truth. You don't get to deny it. It boggles the brain how two grown men living under one roof can't learn the first thing about washing or cleaning or... I'd say it shows how capable you are, even when you look so young. Those aren't things simply anyone can do. Well, I was entrusted with these flats by my aunt, so I want them to be spick and span at all times. She thrust out her chest with pride.
Don't forget, you had something very important you wanted to discuss with them, didn't you?
Yes, you're right. Very important. Her smile vanished and was instantly replaced by a grave frown. Tell us everything. Listen, something dreadful happened last night. Hudson had a way of jumping from one expression to the next without losing an ounce of sincerity. She was growing increasingly emotional as she explained her predicament. When I returned home at 9, I found my room in a disastrous state. I know I locked the door when I went out, too. Around what time did you leave home? 6 at night. A relative of mine was visiting London, so we went to eat at a place belonging to his friend. So the crime took place sometime between 6 and 9 in the evening. I was so frightened I rang Scotland Yard immediately and had them investigate. Fortunately, the master key for everyone's flats was in the safe, so all's well there. No money was taken either. Now, one thing I haven't been able to find since is a very important piece of tableware. It was part of my late grandmother's collection.
They said they'll try looking into it, but the odds of finding it seem to be low.
Do you suspect it was stolen? Yes, and there was something else unusual about that night. The window had clearly been broken into, but the glass fragments that should have been there simply weren't. They were all gone. That is unusual. The window is made from ordinary glass, isn't it? It is, but I can't fathom who else could have taken them. There was not a single fragment among the mess. For what reason would the culprit take broken glass with them?
Oh, on the subject of the glass.
Watson piped in as if he'd been thinking long and hard about something.
That may be missing, but the culprit left something else in its stead. Blood. I suspect they were injured by the shards. There is evidence they made to wipe this blood off the floor as well, so perhaps it was all taken to reduce evidence.
It's possible. Then we're potentially looking for someone with an injured arm or hand. Where is Holmes, by the way? I half expected the man would come barging in salivating the second he smelt a case. Oh, that he most certainly would. Is he out for the day?
He's in Edinburgh assisting with one of his dad's cases. My dad's with them also.
Well, that sounds like a right little family outing. Why didn't you join them?
I didn't want to leave the office unmanned, so I asked Holmes if I could stay. Besides, I've had my fill of trips with the four of us when we were children.
Watson's lips curled into a bitter smile at the corners. I wonder if we'll hear about that at some point.
That's why I'm all on my own. And I'm sure you agree that this might be a bit much to handle without any additional help. I'd really appreciate it if the two of you were to lend me a hand.
Certainly. Can you tell us more about the item that was stolen, Hudson? Plenty. It's a Regal Dalton plate, for one thing. Quite an old one, too, with a well-loved floral and fruit design. It's in such pristine condition, even Mum said she's rarely seen tableware with colors as pretty. Which item has more value? The stolen plate or that cup and saucer with the flowers and lemons? Marple indicated in the direction of another item in Hudson's collection. The plate, of course. Not to devalue them, but the cup and saucer are both false. Look at the mark on the back. I gently turned the saucer upside down. On it was a symbol of a lion standing atop a crown, but instinct grabbed me whilst I observed it. Something wasn't quite right about this. I turned over another nearby piece of tableware and confirmed my suspicions. There was a striking difference between the two designs. See? They aren't quite the same as this one here. I don't mind it, though. It might not be the real thing, but my mum gave it to me, and my grandmother used to drink from it, so it's real enough to me. I can't rest easy if I don't have it, so I always keep it with me. Hudson. She was right that the marks on the cup and saucer were different to that on the rest of her collection, but this was not the end of my suspicions. This time I can see the two tails on the one lion, so I didn't notice that the first time. I was too entranced by the star and the 4 circles. Marple, am I correct in thinking the lion is only meant to have one tail? You are, but this one has 2. In fact, everything except the tea set depicts a lion with 2 tails. Hudson, may I ask a question about this cup?
Actually, I'd like to ask you something myself first.
Watson quickly led me and Marple outside for some privacy. Is something wrong?
Well, you see...
Something doesn't add up. She's telling us that the stolen plate is genuine. I can't help but think. I know what's been bothering me. Yeah, the stolen plate is false. I almost did the wrong one. I'm like, wait a minute. How does this go again? The plate that was stolen is actually a counterfeit. It's the cup and saucer that are genuine Regal Daltons.
That's right. But she's been convinced otherwise ever since she was a child. She doesn't have a clue.
Interesting that the culprit chose to steal the plate in this case. I have an idea who the thief could be, then. It had to be someone close to Hudson. It had to be someone close to her. That's why they chose to steal something important to her over something of monetary value. That's how I see it. A burglar would have targeted something they could sell. Actually, seeing the little chibi of her, I keep forgetting to check my status. Oh my goodness. Whoa, okay. We are an A. And full of yellow for Watson. Got some love for Akachi and Lupin apparently as well. Nothing for Holmes. Oof. Poor Holmes. But that begs the question, why steal it at all? If we stayed outside for much longer, Hudson would grow suspicious, so we decided to go back inside. And upon our return, as if it only had just come to her, Marple suddenly began to share an old tale. I'm reminded of a similar story from my grandmother. The case of the Benjamin family, if you've ever heard of it. Oh? Do tell. It happened in her home village of St. Mary Mead. The Benjamin family ran the only shop in the village. If it was there, then what does this have to do with here? I'm sure she'll get to that. Just keep listening. Oh, all right. Like this case, tableware had been stolen. It was the culprit who later claimed to have found it before promptly returning it safely to its owner, earning a considerable reward in the process. So they set the whole thing up for a reward? That's right. I wouldn't be able to tell the full tale if the truth hadn't come out at some point, of course. They were later ostracized for their actions. The owner of the tableware was a kind soul, however, and they forgave the thief for their crime. Are you telling us all this because it might be what's happening to me?
It's one option, though it's still too early to say for certain.
We can't yet dismiss that we might be dealing with an honest-to-goodness theft. Wait! I've got a brilliant theory of my own. Will you hear it? By all means. The plate that was stolen was a Regal Dalton original, and one of the finest in the land. She enthusiastically produced a newspaper and unfolded it over the table. Gentleman thief Lupin Jr. targets another British national treasure. Is being beautiful a crime? His list of stolen antiques says yes. Isn't that an issue of the London Sport? You're aware of how infamous it is for the rubbish it publishes, I'm sure. I should hope you aren't taking anything it says to heart. But look! This bit right here! He's even started setting his sights on the treasures lurking in ordinary British homes. Readers beware! This must be it! Dear. Oh.
Right.
It pains me to say this after the work you've put in, Hudson, but I doubt Lupin Jr. is the culprit. Agreed. I'd also recommend you stop reading that newspaper immediately. It's for your own good. But that plate is a national treasure! Why, if I were a gentleman thief, I wouldn't dare turn down a chance to steal it. Perhaps, but he wouldn't make a mess of a young lady's room in the process. That's simply not the way he does things. From what I've observed of his thefts, at any rate. Well, there must be some explanation. With no defense left for her claim, Hudson grew quiet. This conversation wasn't without its results, at least. We now knew that the best place to start our search would be with the people closest to her. Right. Let's start our investigation. Would it be alright if we borrowed a list of the current tenants? Of course. I only ask that you keep its contents private. Not to worry. We will. Hudson went over to the shelf and pulled a handful of documents from it, which she then displayed for our perusal. You want the current list, which is this one. Thank you. Oh? What's that one over here? I was drawn not to the one she displayed most prominently, but to a second sheet, one that looked ever so slightly aged compared to the other. This one? It's the previous tenant list. We used to have 2 more flats filled than we do now. I see. Might we look at that one as well, as a precaution? I don't see the harm in it. Mind you, I can't see it being relevant to your investigation.
No reason not to start with the current list as things stand, but better to be thorough.
Ooh, is it time to start questioning people? May I join in? My, would it do for the landlady to leave the building unattended? These are special circumstances. And that ring means you would never abandon someone in need, right? Never ever. Leave the investigation to me. Then logic dictates you'll need a capable assistant. Holmes has Watson, but you don't have anyone. An assistant? What a thought. A fine thought, even. It would be wonderful to have someone like Watson helping me. Watson? Yes! You need someone who's considerate, courageous, someone who can make rational decisions when the time calls for it. Truly, that does sound wonderful, but it would not be easy to find someone like that. It's a good thing you don't have to search, then. From now on, I'm your assistant.
Hudson! You can't force her into it.
And Why not? I'd give anything to solve this case together.
Maybe so, but you're the client in this case, and it's much too dangerous to be coming with us when we might come across the thief. And what if they were to come back when they see the flat is empty?
We've nothing to fear. Not with you as a wall to shield us from the danger.
A wall? Why not something more like a gallant knight? I'd even settle for something resembling a human. You'll come to my defense, won't you, Emily?
I'd say we're as ready as can be. Remember to arrive promptly tomorrow, Watson. We can't do this without you.
Are you ignoring me?
Did you hear a wall around here, guys? Strange. We gathered in the office the very next day, each of us eager to begin our investigation. Today's the day. Now, where shall we start? Let's go through the list of tenants first. Then we can decide. Hudson produced the list from her bag. First we have Mr. Curtis, who lives in the innermost room. He's a kindly old man who used to play with me a lot when I was a little girl. Of all the tenants here, he's lived here the longest. Very good. Has anything been out of the ordinary with him lately? With him? There is one thing. He's been a bit slow with paying his rent. Last month and the month before that one, to be more specific. Thinking about it, I've yet to receive this month's too.
So he's likely having financial problems.
It's possible. Next, there's the avid traveler, Mrs. Blaw. She went on holiday to Italy a week ago and came back this morning. If that's true, then she has a flawless alibi. But we still have to see if she has anything to add whilst confirming her story. My! You're an excellent detective, Emily. You're leaving no stone unturned. Well, it isn't difficult to pretend that you've gone on holiday when you haven't. Even if she did, there's a chance she may have relevant information to pass along.
Precisely. We'll see if she's got anything to say, and hopefully in the process see evidence of her travels.
Lastly, we have Mrs. Atlee. She's very talkative, that one. I hear her husband's abroad on work-related business. Has been for some time. She loves tea, making sweets, and collecting tableware. Whenever I see her, I always end up staying ages because we get caught up in conversation. She collects tableware, you say? Does she know about your plate? Yes, she does. And I know all about her collection as well, of course.
Well, now we know who we'll be visiting. Any thoughts on who we should visit first, Emily?
Let's just visit them. Well, let's go backwards this time. See if that makes any difference. Shall we go and pay the tableware collector, Mrs. Atlee, a visit? We arrived at her flat and were, with enthusiasm, hastily invited inside.
I assume you're talking about that Regal Dalton plate. The one with the floral and fruit design. Oh, it was so very elegant. I loved that piece with all my heart. Just thinking about it makes me want to gaze upon it again. And yet it was stolen, you say?
It was. It had to be one of my most prized possessions. She's not hiding how fond of it she is.
She seems a bit too fond of it, if I'm honest.
Well,
I can certainly understand the thief's feelings. How I'd love to keep it all to myself. Or perhaps I can adopt you and obtain it that way.
You always say the most peculiar things.
Is it so peculiar? I dare say there are plenty who would trip over themselves to get their hands on a plate that stunning. Like that gentleman thief Lupin, perhaps.
Lupin? Coming here? What makes you think that? Ah, might you be an avid reader of the London Sport as well?
Oh, are we a fellow fan? Then you must have seen the article to which I'm referring.
I'm afraid I haven't, though I see now how you two became such good tea-drinking companions. You think very much alike. Mrs. Atlee, forgive me for asking, but where were you the night before last?
My parents came here to visit, so I was with them. We greeted a police officer out on the street, as it so happens. I'm certain they would vouch for my credibility. So they would.
Would you mind if we asked one more thing?
Not at all. What is it? Have you noticed anything unusual? Unusual? Aha! I may have. I placed it about a week ago. I ran into Mr. Howard in front of my flat.
Mr. Howard was here?
Did you not meet with him? He had mentioned he had something he wanted to ask you.
No, I didn't. He's not contacted me otherwise for a meeting either. So even though he wanted to meet, he came and went without doing just that? I wonder what he wanted to ask her. I took a cursory glance at Mrs. Atlee's hands. Her left hand's wrapped in a bandage. Thank you for answering so many questions, Mrs. Atlee. I attempted to extend my hand to her as naturally as possible. Thankfully, she extended her own without hesitation, shaking my hand with fervor.
It was my pleasure. I only wish I could have helped more. You helped us more than enough. Have a lovely day, then.
We bade her farewell before leaving.
Lord, that was an experience.
After leaving Mrs. Atlee's flat, we all found ourselves feeling particularly tired. Indeed, she is an unusual one.
You're the last one who ought to call others unusual.
Dang. Let's visit Mrs. Blah. We went to visit Mrs. Blah's flat.
Your room was vandalized. How that must have given you a fright.
That's not all. One of her plates was stolen in the process.
That regal Dalton plate, I take it. And a lovely one it was, too.
That's the one. But I'll get it back, I swear to it.
You really did boast about it to everyone who could stand to listen, didn't you?
True beauty needs to be seen by the masses. Mum always used to say the same when she was showing it off to me. Oh, she would be beside herself if she knew it's been stolen.
I do hope you find it. Really, I do. Have you thought to consult Holmes about it? He lives in one of your flats, doesn't he?
I don't need to. I have the celebrated Detective Emily Whiteley on the case. And better yet, I'm her assistant now.
My, aren't you one of Her Majesty's detectives? Miss Hudson won't have a thing to worry about with you here. You'll try everything you can, I hope.
Absolutely. That said, would you mind if we confirm something? You came back from your holiday earlier today, right?
Oh dear. Am I a possible suspect?
Not at all, ma'am. We're only asking around to see what we can learn.
Very well. Hold on a moment.
She then reached within her handbag for a boat ticket and showed it to us.
Here's something, if it helps. The outgoing journey was a week ago, as marked here, and I returned on the first vessel that left this morning.
This has an official seal and everything. It's valid.
Might we ask you one more thing, then?
Ask me anything you like.
Have you noticed anything strange or out of the ordinary?
Well, it's hard to say with having been away. The only thing that comes to mind is Miss Reston visiting right before I left. Was it, the day before? I hadn't engaged her in any way, only saw her from the window. Did she come to visit you, Miss Hudson?
She didn't, no.
Really? I assume she must have had business with you. I distinctly recall her standing in front of your flat.
I see. Thank you for your help.
I'm glad to have been of service. Wait! Before you go, I bought some almond biscotti for you as a souvenir. By all means, share them with your friends.
How sweet! You really do spoil me. These are meant to be dipped in coffee, aren't they? I wonder if they'll taste any good with tea instead.
Oh, I'm certain they will.
We accepted her souvenir, and then after bidding her a fond farewell, we stepped out of the room. Let's visit Mr. Curtis. I think we should pay Mr. Curtis a visit. He must know Hudson the best of the three, for one thing.
I've spoken to him a few times before myself. I can't say I feel very comfortable around him.
Would you prefer to stay here whilst we go and speak with him?
No! I'm coming. It wouldn't be right to send 3 ladies off without a gentleman to protect them. My pride as a man won't let me.
I should hope not. We need our wall with us.
Not that again, Marple. Wait for me! Wait!
Hello? Is anyone home? I rapped at the door. It opened soon after I heard a series of gentle footsteps, revealing a stern-looking man with a furrowed brow.
What business have you?
I hope we aren't disrupting you, sir. My name is Emily Whiteley, and this is Sarah Marple. Good day. We're in the midst of investigating the burglary that took place in Miss Hudson's home 2 nights ago.
We thought it might be best to begin by asking her neighbors.
Hudson then emphatically popped from behind me. Hello, Mr. Curtis. May we ask a few questions?
Oh, Miss Hudson. You're looking well. What is it that you'd like to ask?
Wonderful. First, did you notice anything out of the ordinary 2 nights ago?
I most certainly did. Around 7 o'clock, I heard the sound of breaking glass not once, but twice. The first time was fairly gentle, but the second was much louder. And where were you at that time? I was in my room reading. I'm not as sprightly as I once was, so I've not been going out much of late.
So you didn't go out at all that day?
No. Oh, am I a suspect? I was alone that night, so I have no alibi. But I swear on my life I didn't steal a thing.
We know you didn't, Mr. Curtis. We're only trying to see what we can find out. Have you noticed anything else strange recently?
Strange? Let's see. There was when Mr. Howard came to visit you, Miss Hudson.
He did? When was that?
A week ago, I'd say. He'd mentioned that he had something he wanted to ask you.
That is awfully strange. I didn't hear from him at all last week. He came to visit her but left before speaking to you. I wonder what he wanted to ask her. Well, if you remember anything else, please come and let me know. I'm desperate to get my plate back.
Oh, I will. You always used to talk about it. I know how precious it is to you.
Trying to be as inconspicuous as possible, I chanced a glance at Mr. Curtis's hands. 2 of the fingers on his right hand are wrapped in bandages. Well, thank you very much for your help. I extended my right hand to him, trying to act as naturally as possible.
Anything for Miss Hudson. I only wish I had more to say.
He took my hand and shook it firmly. We then bid our farewells, but not before he used the same hand to give Hudson an affectionate pat on the head.
He softened right up once he saw you, didn't he?
He did. See? I told you it was a good idea to have me as your assistant. Have you ever shown the plate to him before, Hudson? No. Why? Never mind. It was a random thought. So he doesn't know exactly what it looks like.
Shall we go over what we know so far?
On the day of the crime, Hudson was out between 6 and 9. Mr. Curtis heard the sound of glass breaking around 7. He also claims he heard the sound of it breaking twice. The first time gently, the second time loudly. Oddly, whilst the room was left in disarray, the only things stolen were the plate and the broken glass from the window. It struck me how everyone we interviewed knew about the plate. You must boast about it left and right. Well, I love it. I can't help it. Still, Mrs. Blah was away on holiday, and Mrs. Atlee was with her parents, so they both have fairly solid alibis.
Mr. Curtis's age seems like it'd make sneaking in through the window difficult.
Would you mind if we had some tea as we discuss Hudson? Right away! Hudson sprang into motion and was off in a split second.
The hardest thing to work out here is the motive. What reason would any of them have to steal just the plate?
That really is the question. Incidentally, Mrs. Atlee is aware that it's a counterfeit. What? She is? Yes. She's kept it from Hudson because she doesn't want to dampen her spirits, but she told me as much rather quietly when we were on the way out.
This is a conundrum, to be sure.
With all we know in mind, there doesn't seem to be a single one amongst them who has the ability and motive to steal it. The sound of tiny footsteps and clacking china approached. It was Hudson carrying a pot of tea and several cups on a tray. Tea is served. Thank you, Hudson. You're very welcome.
And here's another part of the mystery. Why did the culprit need to break the glass twice?
That's true. An experienced burglar could have sneaked in through the door without making a sound or broken the glass in one strike. Could they have lacked experience in burglary? What else could it be?
Also, 2 names came up during our questioning, didn't they? Miss Reston and Mr. Howard.
We looked at the list Hudson had given us. Neither of those names are on this list from what I can see.
That's because they're former tenants. They're on this list, see?
Watson presented the previous list again, and as he said, both names were on it. What sort of person is Mr. Howard? He's a sweet man who's always been good to me. Back when he lived with his family, they would often invite me over for dinner and the like. He and his wife divorced around the same time he moved, sadly. As far as I'm aware, he now lives alone. He asked me a number of times before moving out of here to tell me her new address, but she'd requested I not say anything. I'm sorry. It isn't as though I suspect him of anything. It's all right. It's your duty as a detective to suspect everyone, and as your assistant, I want to help. Thank you, Hudson. What about Miss Reston? What is she like? Her? I don't know her very well. We never spoke much, and she always appeared rather grumpy. Oh! But when I was talking to Mrs. Atlee about the plate once before, she'd mentioned Miss Reston expressed interest in it. One of her hobbies is making ceramics, apparently, so she was asking a lot of questions.
If that's so, she wouldn't be short of places to hide a plate.
Even asking about the plate is enough to arouse suspicion. Then let's split up and question the 2 of them. We can get together once we're done. Don't stay out too late, all right? Right. We can meet in front of the school, since that's about the halfway point.
Don't go pressing them too much. If one of us is questioning the culprit and they realize we're onto them...
We'll be careful. Very, very careful.
I'm sure you will, but make sure we're together before trying anything dangerous. Promise?
Promise. All right, let's go.